And it is a rainy afternoon here in Tel Aviv and generally sunny Israel. I have the pleasure to be with Erez Lampert, who is the founder and CEO of PathKeeper. PathKeeper is changing the way people do spinal surgery instead of flying blind. They have a really interesting product to make it much more precise and safe for the surgeon and for the patient. And Erez, welcome to Life Sciences Today.
Thank you so much, Danny. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so we met on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and there was this, I think, discussion going on about do Israelis know how to sell or not how to sell, which, of course, we all know that Israelis know how to sell. They sell a lot of cyber and defense technology
Correct.
and a lot of other good products like secondhand homes in Michigan. But I think we'll start with our usual question, was tell us about your own personal journey to Pathkeeper.
Thanks, Danny. So I'm engineering my background, and I started my career in the Israeli aerospace. I worked in the Israeli NASA, was involved in satellite launches. I don't know if you know, but Israel is the only one who are shooting satellites to the wrong direction. We are sending them west instead of east. In the middle of very populous area. So it was a great experience, learning a lot about algorithms in real time, high risk stuff, and image processing, fusion. And then moved my career into startups here and there. And in 2012, I joined Invisalign, the dental company, and led the development of their 3D intraoral scanner called Itero Element. I'm happy to say Itero became a really overnight success and created probably the biggest medical device exporter in Israel. Now there's about 800 people in Israel that are part of the Itero team and still a very big exporter in Israel. I When Itero and Invisalign became big, I started looking for ideas how to create more change and improve lives better in healthcare. And I met Professor Josh Schroeder from Hadassah, and talked about Invisalign, talked about spine surgery and orthopedic surgery. And Professor Schroeder basically said, can you do something like the Invisalign for orthopedics? And that's how PathKeeper started.
Wow. So that's a great thing. So when was the company actually founded?
So the idea, I would say, was started in 2018, our first meeting, me and Professor Schroeder. It took me, I guess, throughout 2018 to raise the money. So the real, boots on the ground, people working besides me was the end of 2018, early 2019.
Cool. And you've made a lot of progress, but it has been a journey from 2018 to 19 to the beginning of 2025. And we'll talk about that. That's
Sure.
really a lot about what this podcast is about and some of the things you and I have been talking about. So tell me about your value creation. So I'm not a spinal surgeon. I read the website. I talked to you before a couple of weeks ago, so I have kind of like a general idea. But give it to our listeners who are lay people. Some of them might even be drug people, not necessarily spinal surgeons. Okay.
Right. I think the first thing that's important to understand is the challenge that the spine surgeon has when they're doing a surgery. So think about us as patients. We want the surgeons to do as little exposure as possible in our skins, to have the smallest cut, the little as less possible, moving muscles, hurting tissues. And it's not just, aesthetics. It's also how quickly will we recover from the surgery. So the surgeon is trying to open as little as possible from our body and still do the work that they need to do. In complex spine, what we call instrumented spine surgery, they have to put screws to stabilize the spine. It's basically a biomechanical work. The spine is starting to deteriorate, or maybe it's a disease, and the surgeons put screws and rods to stabilize the spine like scaffolds in building a house. But unlike, a builder, a project builder in a house, an engineer, they have very little visibility and it's very delicate. So if you think about the cervical spine, if the screw goes a bit off on one side, it will hurt the nerve cord and it might create paralysis. On the other side, it might touch an ortho and create basically a fountain of blood in the middle of surgery. So this is the challenge that surgeons have. This is a challenge a surgeon had all their life. And today surgeons are facing two impossible choices in technology. One is fluoroscopy, which means using a 2D X-ray almost continuously during surgery to guide them. You have to wear a lead vest, work with few hours using your lead vest. You have to basically guess the 3D using a 2D system, and you're always exposed to radiation. Your hands, your throat. Women surgeons has 4 times more breast cancer than regular women in the community. That's a terrible, terrible choice. And misplaced screws numbers are high. So great surgeons, easy cases, they do great. But a young surgeon, anatomy not so normal, numbers are very bad. So that's option number one. Simple, low cost, but problematic both for patient and surgeon. Option number two, door number two, is $1 million, $2 million system. A robotic system with 3D X-ray in the surgery room. You have to have a lot of infrastructure. It slows you down as a surgeon, but it's a much more stable solution. So today, these high-cost systems are about 30% of the market, and the low-cost systems are about 70%. We wanted to create something that breaks this deadlock, something that gives the value of $1 million system without costing $1 million system, that will give the speed of fluoroscopy without the radiation. And that's how PathKeeper was born, using 3D imaging that we have developed for surgery, AI as a back engine, and together we really track the patient anatomy using the optics throughout the case and guide the surgeon's tools and instrument in a very efficient and effective process. No radiation, no slowdown, no infrastructure for the hospital, and much less risks.
Well, that's like an amazing value proposition. So how do you actually make money from that? What's and you talked to me a little bit before the show about how you're using 3D printing and to do this. So I think, I was just in my mind, I'm thinking about disposables and stuff like that. But tell us about your business model.
Right. So the simple, straightforward, on the table business model is capital plus recurrent revenue. So you sell the system and you have disposable, consumable that are used per surgery and you get money. But that's like above the surface. That's the pshat for the Israeli guys.
Right. So
The,
that's the easy way out for people who don't know Hebrew. Okay.
right. The more interesting business model is actually the implant business model, because spine implant business is about $10 billion in the United States, $10 billion from implants. Now, all those implants are put into the patient either through fluoroscopy, through robotics, or through PathKeeper. So if you're an implant company and you can convince me as a surgeon to use PathKeeper, and you integrate it with PathKeeper, you can sell much more implants in a much stabler way. And if I bought PathKeeper, or maybe got it for free from you because you're an implant provider, now I will probably not buy the Medtronic robot. So you've created a business and technical and clinical moat for your business as implants. And the implant business is a multi-million-dollar business per site. So for you as an implant provider, it might even make sense to give PathKeeper for free. Pay PathKeeper as much money as they want, because if you get this business, you're going to make millions on the implants. So it's in some way, it's a bit more complex, but in some way, we are, the printer, or we are the razor in the razor blade classic model. We provide the capital so somebody else can sell disposables in a very big way. So
That's a really really smart business model. Now we talked about this before the show, and I see now the notification on the website. You signed a distribution contract with High Ridge Medical. Now, people who are not in the spinal field, people like me, right, say that this is who is High Ridge, right? Okay, so High Ridge is the spine company. Okay, that's what they do. They do distribution of products for spinal surgeries. Did I say that right?
Yes. So we have, I mean, talking about commercialization and talking about how to sell in the United States. I think I've just finished a meeting with an entrepreneur that wants to build a medical device company, and he was asked by investors, "How are you going to sell in the United States?" And I've got feedback from people telling me, "Well, to sell in the US, you need to raise 20 million, $50 million. How are you going to raise $50 million for PathKeeper to sell in the United States?" So once we sign with Highridge, and we also signed a very important deal with Vizient, everything really changes. Because as you said, Highridge is an unknown name, but Highridge is basically Zimmer Biomet for spine. And
Mhm.
Zimmer Biomet is one of the first orthopedics company. The orthopedics capital of the world is Warsaw, Indiana. I don't know if you've ever been there, but that's so Zimmer Biomet started. Zimmer and Biomet, two different companies, started in Warsaw, Indiana. And Zimmer is a huge company, has been around for 100 years. And Highridge is focused, is their subsidiary, became independent, and is selling spine. So this Highridge Medical has relationship, distributors, partnership, access to surgeon, access to the business. Once Highridge works with us and basically leverage PathKeeper unique technology to sell more implants, they are bringing us to the market in a very significant way.
In
But
a
the
very
fact that
effective,
Highridge,
in a very
and
effective way also, yeah, because there's like a lot of synergy there. More implants,
exactly,
more pathkeeper, more surgeries, more revenue for the surgeon and the medical center, right? So it's
uh,
win 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 win
exactly,
win.
exactly. So it works for us very, very well. We just started, the agreement was signed in Q4, and we're just starting, but we see a very, very big funnel. We are now, I mean, the funnel, the speed that they are moving is faster than we can support their commercialization. We are kind of slowing them down as a small company, but they also created a brand recognition for us. A big company, very well known. I can tell you that some agreements that were like slow walking from other hospitals suddenly became faster because now that we have been approved by Highridge, we are a legit company. We're not just another Israeli startup.
Well,
And we
good to
did
hear.
something very similar with Vizient. Vizient is the biggest GPO in the United States, group purchasing organization that controls or leads contracting in hospitals. The fact that Vizient approved us gives us access to thousands of hospitals in the United States. And now this is going to be a synergistic situation for us. We have built a relationship, we have the distribution force and commercial force by Highridge, and we have the open business and scalability through Vizient. So unique technology, strong commercial uh, partner, and a GPO that opens the door for significant part of the US market.
So the interesting thing about this is that, looking back to my own career, one of the businesses we had was a company that software distribution. Now, after 3 years, so within almost 4 years, by year four, we were doing 20 million in sales a year. And we had a distribution channel of about, I guess, 100 resellers. And the thing is that by the end of year three, I understood that distribution, I could be selling anything. Okay. It didn't have to be software. It didn't have to be a technical thing. We could have been, I thought at that point in the company's, development cycle said we could be selling, I don't know, children's shoes. We could be selling, uh, disposable diapers to new parents. Okay, it didn't matter because once you think about two-tier distribution and resellers as a way of getting your product into the market, then it doesn't really matter. You just have to have the right partners to do it, and you have to know how to do it. You have to manage. Of course, there's a lot of stuff behind that. Not for this podcast today. But distribution and resale is a whole science in itself. But once you understand the science and you know how to execute it, like I guess Highbridge knows how to do that really well, then you know it can go really fast.
Yeah, that's what we hope. That's our plan for 2026, to really create a significant commercial positioning and revenues in the United States to really become a company to be reckoned with, to know, to understand, and to prove that PathKeeper is really changing spine surgery. This is what we want to do. Help patients have better spine surgeries.
So let's go back to this question to sort of wrap up this part of the podcast, which was the people that say, well, you need $50 million, and anyhow, Israelis don't know how to sell in the US market. Okay. So
Right.
the answer to that question is
Look, I mean, raising $50 million and hiring 50 salespeople in the United States, that's the wrong answer, in my opinion.
mhm.
The right answer I mean, if that's really how you sell, then you look, think about Philadelphia, Boston area. It's from driving distance is about as big as Israel, and there's so many people out there. You can sell a lot. If you just focus on Philadelphia, Boston, you need to hire few salespeople, and you can sell a lot in just that area. So the solution is not to hire 50 people and send them to Idaho and to, I don't know, Missouri. The solution is to really understand how the healthcare system works in the United States. And it's a lot about gatekeepers. As we said, Vizient controls contracting. And even big companies are fighting for contracts for hospitals. Hospitals keep pruning their contracts. They are not working with anybody. They're not open to have 10 suppliers for something. So they're choosing and they're pruning every year. They're choosing who they're going to work with. And there are processes how to get there. If you build a sales force and you go to the mom and pop distributors and go through the VAC committee every time, yes, you're going to sell, but you're going to pour blood and sweat and time on each sale. So you can't scale like that. You can sell 5 units, 10 units by raising a lot of money and create the fake impression, I would say. Maybe fake is too strong a word, but forgive my English, but create
No,
this impression,
no, an imaginary impression. It's like a
imaginary.
impression.
Yeah,
It's
that
a fantasy.
exactly.
Okay, it looks like it's like all these digital health companies saying about, oh, we did pilots here and there. That pilots don't mean shit. Okay, so
Yeah,
you're creating.
you can say that.
I can
Yeah.
say that. Okay, because pilots don't mean shit, and selling five low ticket deals and telling your VC that you have traction is not the right answer.
Especially if those 5 guys have equity in your company through some sort of an investor or through a consulting agreement, which is very, very common. So the right answer, in my opinion, is to go through the gatekeepers, to go to the strategics, companies like Highridge. Now, you don't have to have Highridge is the fifth biggest one in the United States. There are multiple companies that sell 50 or $100 million a year and will do just as well. You need to find a company that has the relationship with the big distributors that are professional and have access. So that's one part. You need to have the big distributors, and the biggest distributors, the ones that sell a lot, are usually tied to the big companies. So either you go to the secondary and tertiary distributors, or you partner with a big, strong company. Again, it doesn't have to be $1 billion company, it could be $100 million company, but it has to have a company that knows how to sell and is already selling and see the value in selling you. So that's number one. The second one is contracting. Getting VAC done one by one is terrible. When we started, we did a pilot a few times actually. It took me time to learn. The surgeon was happy. He said, yeah, I want PathKeeper. And then after a couple of months, I hear that they bought a big competitor, paid 5 times more. It even happened to me in Israel, which is they bought an American device for $1 million where they could got mine probably for
You,
50%
you told me
discount.
that story, and it was like sad. Okay, it was sad. The lack of
Yes,
what we call the sad of local patriotism. Okay, I was on a podcast.
exactly.
I was on a call yesterday with a woman in the Bay Area, and all she could say was how much she loves Israel. Okay, I'm thinking, if I'm feeling the love like that from this person in the Bay Area, she's an entrepreneur, okay? If I'm feeling the love, I would expect to feel the love from, the hospitals that are trying out your system, right? That's what I would expect to hear. Or, my
Right.
previous company, I would expect to feel the love from, some of the big players in Israel. But it's like, where's the love, guys,
It's safer. It's safer to buy from Medtronic than to buy from PathKeeper, and that's exactly what we are trying to solve here. Because it's safer to buy from Medtronic than buy from PathKeeper, I need to be in a situation where it becomes safe to buy from me. And how do I do that? I partner with a big commercial partner, and now they're the one that give me support, and I partner with the group purchasing organization or the IDNs. So now you have to go to those groups, you have to go to the executives, and you have to convince them that they should bet on a startup. And it's they have it some way in their DNA. So those groups know how to handle startup. It's not as crazy as it seems, but they're choosing startup, very, very carefully. But they are working with startups. They have that on their mandate to bring startups in. You just need to find the right people and convince them that you are the right startup. They will not bring 10 startups every year, but they will bring a few. And if you can convince them that you are the right one, now you have passed the gatekeeper. Now you have access to the market. You have brand recognition. Now you can sell. Now it's the time to raise money. You don't need 50, maybe 5, maybe 10. That's what we are doing now. Get the salespeople. And it's not really salespeople. It's more like a clinical salespeople. Because I get the leads from Vizient, I get the leads from HighReach. I need to follow up. I need to show them that technology works and convince them that it brings value. I don't need to convince executives. I don't need to convince administrators. I don't need to go to the procurement and beg for a chance. I just need to show that technology works. And that was always easy for us. That was always the easy part.
Yeah.
Now that we have the gatekeepers, we have a full process of sales.
Well,
And
that's
that's the
phenomenal.
big change.
That's phenomenal. But it didn't happen overnight. It took a while, didn't it?
Yes, it took a while. It took us, I would say, a year to iron out the technology from FDA until it was smooth enough for them to even consider us. And then it took another year from them saying, yeah, we like you guys, till they ran through their due diligence process and signed an agreement with us. And it literally a year, I'm not exaggerating, from first meeting in NAS, spending an hour together. We like your technology. We think you guys are great. Through 6 months of due diligence, going to surgery, presenting to God knows how many KOLs, surgeons, and labs and live surgeries, until they said yes, we want to work with you, and then negotiation on the terms and deals and how to structure the deals and so on. So it takes, as I said, it took us a year to iron out the technology, another year to prove the technology is good enough for those gatekeepers to approve.
Oh, so Israelis know how to sell. They just know how to sell and to open up the right doors, I guess, or do it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you need to know how to sell to this specific market.
So let's go to I guess the surprise question. So the past month or so, in the past few podcasts, I've been asking my guests a surprise question, and our regular listeners know that I'm going to ask a surprise question. So here comes the surprise of it. So what is the biggest anti-pattern in your industry today?
Right. I mean, I think until 6 or a year ago, it was robotics. The field that a $2 million, $3 million robotic system can solve all your problems in the world. There are still people that think that, but I think robotics is starting to lose the glamour for a more low cost. Um, I think from my perspective, from the enabling technology, there are two problems. One that's still not really in surgery because is that AI will solve everything. This
Ooh,
is I mean, nobody takes AI into the surgery room besides us, so it's kind of delicate discussion. But everybody talks about AI in healthcare, and then I go and I realize that the only thing they do is practice management and not clinical or pathology or something, which is great, but it's not surgical. So AI can solve everything. This is one pattern, and the second one is that well, I mean it's we can do that, we don't need navigation because we've been doing surgeries and we don't have problems. It's we don't I mean it's funny. Every guy you go to, even in my previous career in dentistry, they will tell you that they're doing a lot of revision surgeries or revision cases from their colleagues next door, but they don't have surgeries that they need to revise. And my theory about that is, well, if I go to a dentist, not talking about spine surgeons, they are all perfect. If I go to a dentist and they put an implant and the implant falls, I'll not go back to the dentist. I'll go back to another one to fix it. I don't trust the guy that failed.
right.
So everybody is seeing the failures of others. They don't see their failures. So there is this, and surgeons, dentists, those clinicians, they are expert. They've been learning many years. They know what they're doing. But I still think there's in many cases, not in all, but in many cases, there is some gap between how good you think you are and how good you really are.
Well, so you can say it's okay. It's called transferring the risk to someone else. It's like making your problem someone else's problem, right? And that's of course is a very well-known pattern. It happens a lot in medicine, but it happens in any service business, I think. No?
Yes, 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 I agree. So there is this gap. And so sometimes we feel, it's like everyone that drives a car think they're a great car driver, right? They will not go into an accident. They know what they're doing. And it's the same thing with surgeons. So more and more surgeons, especially young surgeons, understand the value of technological support, but it's still not 100%. And I think that's a challenge for them to realize that it's I say it's like a seatbelt. You know, I'm probably not going to go into a car accident in the next drive. I'm going to put a seatbelt anyway because it's important that for the time when I get into a car accident, I will have a seatbelt. And it might not happen. Hopefully, it doesn't happen in the next 20 years. But it probably will happen once in my life. I just wanted to not be the one that ends my life. And it's the same thing with spinal surgery. You will have issues. You want to be in a situation where it's not the last issue in your career because you made such a big mistake that you're not going to do surgery again. You need that support, even if it's going to happen once in a year, once in a decade. You want to know that that complex case is not your last complex case.
Well, that's a great sell. It's a great sales pitch, and I'll take two, for
Thank
sure.
you.
Um, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, Erez. I think we've poked some holes in some common misconceptions about Israelis not knowing how to sell, and and I've learned a lot about what spine surgery really means, and a bit about the industry, which is hugely interesting. Um, my name is Danny Lieberman. I'm the host of Life Sciences Today. This podcast is available on all the major channels on Spotify and Google and Apple and YouTube, of course. It's my pleasure to host Erez Lampert, who is the CEO and founder of PathKeeper, basically helping surgeons who do spine surgery not fly blindly. And we'll go live towards the end of February, and look for us online. Thank you so much, Erez, for being on the show.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much.